Welcome back, everybody, to The Pretty Little Death. I am one of your hosts, Christina Lynn,
And I'm Cassie.
and today we're discussing A Court of Mist and Fury by
Yay!
Sarah J. Maas.
hmm
We're going to read the back and then we're going to discuss. We read this, I read this like immediately after the first one. I think I alluded to that in our last discussion, actually. Um,
Yes.
And yeah, we finally finished it, the two of us, and we're going to discuss it. And the back says, pardon me, Feyre has undergone more trials than one human woman can carry in her heart. Though she's now been granted the powers and lifespan of the High Fae, she is haunted by her time under the mountain and the terrible deeds she performed to save the lives of Tamlin and his people. As her marriage to Tamlin approaches, Feyre's hollowness and nightmares consume her. She finds herself split into two different people, one who upholds her bargain with Rhysand, High Lord of the feared Night Court, and one who lives out her life in the Spring Court with Tamlin. While Feyre navigates a dark web of politics, passion, and dazzling power, a greater evil looms. She may just be the key to stopping it, but only if she can harness her harrowing gifts, heal her fractured soul, and decide how she wishes to shape her future, the future of a world in turmoil. So, we are recording this on the heels of our March book club. This will probably be out before the March book club discussion. Um, what did you think?
I loved this book. I wholeheartedly, I think it was a perfect sequel to um, A Court of Thorns and Roses. I think this was, it was a story about trauma, really, and how Pharaoh is getting over her trauma of her trials. Through Amaranthia of the last book and surviving that. And it, I had a fantastic time throughout the whole thing. It was hard to put down. Um,
You tried
I,
listening to it on audiobook, didn't you?
I did. I originally borrowed it via Libby, the audiobook, and for some reason I had a hard time. It was like the first couple of days. I've had a hard time focusing. Just audiobooks are not necessarily my thing. I like to sit down, put headphones on with white noise music and focus if I have to. But I had a good time. I had a difficult time finding that many faults in the book at all. I think the progressing romance between Rhysand and Feyre was very well thought out, very respectful, very natural to the characters, both of them. And the payoff is really, really good.
I agree. Like this, I was put out by A Court of Thorn and Roses. Like we discussed how I would have ended that a little bit better. Um,
Yes,
just to kind of set up the next book. Now, when we had that discussion, I had already finished this one.
that's right.
Um, and so I think the setup, it could have been better in the last book. I felt the last book was glacial compared to this one.
Yes,
Um, like
very slow
there was
going.
just so much that didn't need to be there. I know they were trying. She was trying to. She being the author was
Mhm.
trying to really set the stage of what we could expect from Tamlin, but it did feel like the first book didn't wasn't meant to have a second,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Um, the reason I would contest that um, now, and maybe because you had read both of them
Mm-hmm.
before we had discussed about it, and I had only read the first, and I kind of circled or retracted my thoughts on uh, how I think it was meant to be a series from the beginning because I don't know. Sarah's her other works. Um, and I don't know if this was, again, I don't have that knowledge, but the fact that her relationship and all of the spicy scenes happen behind closed doors,
Yeah.
that um that was not necessarily a red flag, but it's just more like that's definitely on purpose.
Well, I think the
And
first one
how,
was written to be a YA.
okay.
I think. I'm not sure. I haven't dived deep, and like I said before, I stayed the hell away from this series.
I know.
Like for a
It had a
long
lot of
time.
hype.
Hype. So much hype.
Hype repels you.
It does.
Yes.
It really does. But even with all of that said, like it felt like that series, that story, that last chapter, maybe it wasn't the last chapter, maybe the last two chapters, where she meets Rysand on the balcony, that felt like an afterthought. Like everything else had been concluded and wrapped up so nicely. Like I felt
Now,
like that had been tacked on because somebody was like, "Oh, this could be a series." Like it just
well,
didn't feel in that flow with everything that had happened before.
now then, do you believe the festival with the spring and her meet with Rysand um back, I forgot what the festival was called.
It's
Uh
basically the Beltane
the
festival.
Beltane festival. Her meet with Rhysand, was that like an afterthought that she shoehorned that in, or was
No,
that supposed to be? So then I
I
disagree.
because
Then,
well no, no,
because
well here the reason that I say no is because he does show up later in the book.
yeah,
You know, to help her. I think it was a good way for her to introduce him into the machinations. For some reason, my mouth is not working.
that's right.
That were to happen later. I think that meet cute did need to happen, but I
Mhm.
don't think it was until later when after she had completed the story, like, oh, you know, there's a part in your writing process. I've done this a couple of times with a couple of my stories where I'm like, this could be wrapped up very nicely and it could be done. But you get to a point where you're like, wait, there's some more stories that I could tell with these people just based on their personalities, based on what's going on
You'd
already.
flesh them out
You could
more.
really draw it out. You know, you give so much at the beginning, and then when you hit that point, you're like, hold on, I think this could go further if I had more time. This story could be done, this chapter could be done, but there could be more. And I think
Right.
that's what happened, is that she wrote the first book, she had an idea of how the story would end. And then it was like, oh wait, we could have more story because we've hinted at all these other things happening.
Okay.
We could continue this. And I think that's what happened.
Okay.
It's like those multiple endings of the Lord of the Rings movies, you know? You're like,
Yeah, yeah,
we
yeah, yeah.
only needed one. You didn't need to give us 6. I think that's kind of what happened here. Not saying that this wasn't a good book, because this was by far better than the first one.
Oh, so good. Yes.
I don't know if you guys can see this. I actually tabbed this one until about halfway, it looks like.
And you stopped
And then I
because
stopped.
it was just, you were wrapped.
I
you
was.
know?
By then I was gripped. Okay. And in the first, I don't know, first third, maybe a quarter of this, it's nothing but red tabs and trauma tabs. So, we haven't explained it yet, but we have a nice little rubric between the two of us because sometimes we pass books back and forth. I'm going to pull out my reading journal here. And we have a standard set of tabs. All of my tip outs here.
Yes.
Standard set of tabs, and each one means something different. So, why don't we go through the tabs real quick, because I think they're going to show up more and more in our discussion videos.
Definitely, yeah.
So we have the light purple is the female main character's trauma. Then we have the pink tab, it always denotes the female main. Sometimes we don't use it if it's always in her point of view. At least I don't use it like that. If it's always in her point of view, then
Yeah,
what's the
because
point?
you would just be tabbing every single page, and that's just
Right.
redundant. It's not
I
necessary.
usually just tab the chapter. Like if we're in a book that flops between the two, then I'll use pink tabs just to denote chapters from her point of view. I think in Conqueror, I tabbed whenever like he first showed up when I thought
Mhm.
it was him. I tabbed instances of him, and then after they became enmeshed in each other in the
Mhm.
camp. I just stopped tabbing him at all because he was always there.
Yeah, exactly.
Then purple is the smutty sexy times
Mhm.
because blue is the main character for the
Yes.
males. So
Yeah.
like pink and blue make purple. Like come
Mhm.
on, that's a little logical there. Light green is the male trauma.
Mhm.
Green are green flags of the righteous way.
Yes.
Yellow is the villain. Orange is violence. White are quotes. I don't
Mhm.
normally quote tab quotes.
Mhm.
Like this one I did. There's a couple of them that I actually tabbed. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
and then red flags are red flags, not good ones.
Bad
Um,
red flags.
bad red flags. So that's what our tabs mean. And as you can see here, there were a lot of red flags and trauma
Mhm.
flags.
Yes.
Like that's almost
So much.
all that were here in the first quarter of the book. And that's because the first quarter of the book is her with Tamlin.
Mhm.
Um,
And she's made to feel like she's this helpless individual by Tamlin, who he has his own trauma
right.
from his past. So his trauma is making her even more traumatized by making her relive um, her um, trials and all the violence that she went through. Um, and all she does is long to be free and at least go walk out in the castle grounds, and
Yeah.
she's not even allowed to do that.
She can't leave the building.
No.
And I think it should be pointed out that she is not the only one that's noticing these things. Her maid, I can't remember the name of the maid, notices it. Lucian
Yeah.
notices it. And I think a couple of times he's even said, like, if I could change it, I would, but he's the High Lord of Spring. Like, his word is law. And
Right.
it's for the best. Like, he would
And
not
it's
purposely hurt you.
alluded to the fact that he is owed something, like uh he owes Tamlin his life.
Right.
So basically whatever Tamlin says goes for him.
I would
So
like to remind everybody that Tamlin stood by while Lucian got the shit kicked out of him under the
he
mountain.
did.
Um,
And that should have been red flag number. There was a couple
there was a
that we
lot.
missed.
There were a lot that, well, because this is in first person for those who haven't read it. So we're only seeing things from Feyre's perspective, and it does not change until later in the book when we get a couple of glimpses from somebody else's perspective. Um, and so she doesn't know the history behind them. Um, and she can only perceive what she perceives. So unlike in third person where we might be able to discern what other people are thinking or feeling in that particular moment, we only have what she is able to figure out on her own. So what happens? She's at the court of the spring.
Mhm.
um she's bored out of her mind, and Tamlin just keeps thinking, oh well, if you just painted something you'd feel better. But she can't even open up the
Pick,
paint set without
she,
seeing red. Literally,
yeah.
just the color red triggers her, and all she sees is blood. And that's all that comes up whenever like the urge to paint comes up. She just thinks of the people that she unfortunately had to off
Mhm.
to help save Tamlin and his people because he was too chicken shit to do himself. Um, oh, sorry, did I say out loud? So they're getting ready for a wedding, and their wedding, in fact,
Yes,
and
their wedding ceremony.
And Tamlin invites. Does he invite? I don't remember if he invites or she just shows up. But a priestess.
Yes. The priestess, I think, is always there in the background.
But she wasn't there before.
No? Okay.
Yeah, she wasn't there in the first book.
No. Always there in the background starting this book.
Yes.
Like, kind of like a warden.
Yeah.
That's what it... I got warden vibes from her.
Heck of warden vibes. Inante? I-A-N...
Acanthe?
I don't know. I-A-N-T-H-E.
Ianthe.
Ianthe, yeah.
Yeah.
Who's just trying... She's just kind of like what we were discussing about the sight mother. She is so sickly sweet. It's unnerving. And it put me immediately on edge. Like, at first I was like, okay, maybe this is a good thing. She's got a girlfriend now. But, like, the more interactions, like, just like the second scene with her in it, I was like, she is so bad.
Yeah.
At hiding. Like, you can only be sweet like that. It's like the Southern charm, you know? You only lay it on that thick when you absolutely cannot stand somebody.
Right.
Because the idea is you kill them with kindness.
Yes.
Like,
that's the vibes 100%.
Like,
she is...
Yeah, it's I don't know how to describe it. Like, I want to describe it a certain way, but I don't know if it's going to come out right, kind of thing. Yeah, it's just...
But we get it. She's there as her warden.
And
basically,
I don't think
keep her in line.
I don't think Tamlin set out to do that.
No, but I think subconsciously he felt safer,
right?
That knowing that she was there to watch over her, someone that he trusted,
right? Because he knew her outside of the whole curse and everything like that. And let's be real, he's only known Feyre less than a year, maybe a year. And this other, the priestess, he's known for at least 100. We'll say that.
I think it's less than a year because they haven't even gone to the next Beltane yet. Because like, don't they reference that in the next book or in this book?
Yeah, later on. So yes, it's not even been a year. It really does underline that he doesn't trust her, in the least. Because he's like, oh, well, why don't you go and hang out with Ianthe or whatever? Like, don't you have wedding plans to finalize? And she's like, nobody's letting me do anything. What do you mean, finalize?
Right.
I think I sent you a meme on on Instagram. It was from The Big Bang Theory, where Amy finds her dress.
Yeah. Oh, it's so perfect.
They had relabeled everybody, like, there's Feyre in Amy's dress and Tamlin. You look
that
beautiful.
Was basically what I was envisioning. Not that dress specifically, but it was something just
god awful,
disgusting, like pillowy, cakey, like. Ugh.
And I don't really put a lot of stock in when authors describe clothing. This was poignant though. Like, the first book, she's always in pants and a shirt because she's comfortable in that. In this one, he forces her into dresses.
Yes.
And she begins to like them, but also she's like, but the fact
she's
that
doing it to be pleasing to him.
Right. It's not because she wants to.
Right.
And then the wedding dress. And I think the first instance that she didn't even realize in the book that she was not ready to marry Tamlin is when she first tried on the dress. Because, like, there's I don't remember the scene. I'm going to try and find it real quick. But just the fact that she was like, I don't want to do this. I don't like this dress. And everybody's just gushing over it. Like, I didn't understand the importance of the dress until much later when we really got to focus on what Tamlin's actions were, which, like, totally Rysand's fault that we
Yeah.
we got to see this reflection of what was actually going on, because he was asking him, he was like, you know, you're not eating,
Hmm.
you're not sleeping, you look 10 times better in the like 3 days that you're here, what's going on? And she's like, nothing, we're getting ready for the wedding. He was like, yeah, but you're not happy, are you? Like,
Yeah.
he was being that friend that wasn't shoving it in her face that something
Yeah.
was wrong, but like totally prodding her to look at herself to figure out
Right.
what was wrong, kind of thing. And like, high five to that man. I know
Seriously.
he is probably at the top of our boyfriend book list, or book boyfriend
Yeah.
list,
Yes.
because all he does is just prop her up.
He does it in a way that's not condescending. He does it in a way where he gives like little hints to kind of lead her to realizing it herself. He's not
Yeah,
just sitting there berating and
right.
um, berating her with compliments and everything. That's not the way
He's just being
to
a
promote.
presence.
He's there in a there to help process her trauma, and they kind of bounce off each other with their own trauma, his own trauma.
Yes.
So it is a very healthy relationship that they curate. So it's very good,
Yes.
very well done,
Um,
very well written as well.
I am for a treat for myself, I got the
That's so pretty. I got the coloring book.
I got the coloring book. I'm looking to
Mhm.
see if there is a no. No, this is not what I envisioned by the description of the wedding dress. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe my light is too good. That
Oh
is
no, mine was like worse than
worse than
that.
that. This is actually a very nice dress.
That looks fine. It's definitely not Feyre.
No.
But I was thinking like 80s kind of like
Just
shoulder poofs,
tulle and
tulle
ruffles
everywhere,
and
just bows and frills.
yeah.
I was thinking her looking like a little doll, and I'm like,
Yeah.
gross.
Yes. Um yeah, so he's a presence, and I think it's a good presence. Obviously it's a good presence because of what we find out later.
Yeah.
So they're getting ready for the wedding, and that's when he decides, Rysand I should say, decides to finally show up. It's been 3 months
3 months later
since they left the mountain.
hmm
And the bargain is still in effect. Like,
and it's important to note, she in her head, her body is acting against her like free will, basically. Like, she is going through the motions, but because she feels like she gave her life and sacrificed a couple other people's lives to save Tamlin, she's going to do everything for him,
right.
including getting married. In her head, it's just not what she wants. Obviously, this dress is incorrect, the wedding is incorrect, her feelings are incorrect.
Like,
She
she
gets up
feels
there.
like it's not correct. Not that she doesn't love him. Like,
No,
that's a good
she
thing to
loves
say.
him.
She does love him.
She adores him, and she gets up to the altar, and she is like in her head screaming for help. She's like, no, no,
Someone
no,
save
stop,
me.
someone save me. She says it like 3 times.
Yes. And that's when Rysand shows up, and he invokes their bargain, and he does take her away. And I think it's important to note that even though he takes her away, he doesn't force her to do anything.
Nope.
She can do whatever she wants. In fact, he just sits there and does paperwork, if I remember correctly.
A lot
of paperwork.
Yeah.
He's just there. And then by the end of it, which she is pissed the entire time, he's just like, all right, let's go back. And I think that's the start of the crack for Tamlin. Like, I think he realizes something is not right with her. Because I think, from the impression that I get reading up until that point, he is doing everything in his power to keep himself together, not realizing that he is pushing her away.
Oh, I think he's just basically in crisis mode in the way that he acts, the way that he has a vice grip on his castle, the situation
Yeah,
that's
he's
going
trying to
on.
control because he had
It's
none.
all about control.
Yeah.
Yeah, including her. And he doesn't realize, even though his right hand, Lucian, like really tries to say, hey, you gotta stop, man. She's gonna go.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't listen to him. He doesn't listen to anybody.
And
So
it's
it's a
just
trauma
it's
response. It
very much
is.
a trauma response. And although we talk a lot about trauma from our perspective, from a cis female perspective, trauma does display itself differently, I would say, for men. And that's probably a bigger discussion than just what's in this book.
1000%.
And it's something that we all need to maybe not accept, but definitely realize that.
Be aware of.
Yeah.
Keep it in mind.
Yeah. I mean, it comes up all the time. My husband and I, we both have dealt with some stuff.
Same with me and my husband.
Yeah, like we try. I try very hard not to compare traumas, because it always affects people differently, and nobody's trauma is worse than somebody else's.
Yeah.
It just.
It's like, how your body. You can't control how your body reacts to things.
You can't control how your mind reacts to things.
Yeah.
Like the things that my husband went through, I probably would just let roll off my back. But that's what made him what he is now. That is what makes him go through the motions that he goes through, that helps flavor his responses to things, he tries, I can tell he tries very hard not to let it affect him, but it does. I can see it. Like, he shows anger and his emotions very differently than I do. And there's nothing wrong with that. We all process things differently. In this case, Tamlin, I don't think had first of all, he's emotionally stunted.
Yes.
Like, that comes through very, very clearly. Like, he is an emotional child. He lost his family. That colors how he deals with things. He lost control of the people who he's responsible for. He lost control of how their lives were affected by his choices. And that all comes into play in this. And it's toward the end of the book that I think other people realize that it's really, really difficult for him to do things outside of just battening down that control issue he has.
Yeah, and it is important to note that he is hundreds of years old, and each time, as time progresses, the more and more things, your actions get cemented in your head, your behavior gets cemented in your head without any outside help.
It does.
So
we were talking in a different discussion about how personalities shift gradually and subtly, and he's had time to have those shifts made.
Yes. Lots of time.
And because the filter in which we're now seeing this has happened has changed from before, where he was. I mean, now that you've read this one, I'm going to stop and ask a question. Okay, now that you've read this one, how does that color your view of the first one?
In what way? Like, in what subject?
Just his actions. His
actions?
Yeah. Like, because I think about it, like a couple of people have stated on Instagram that you read the series through once, and then you go back and read it again, and you can see it in a totally different light.
I understood where he was coming from, even in the first book.
Right.
I didn't think it was right for him to be controlling, but I also know the story of Beauty and the Beast,
Right.
and there is heavily, and I know that it was like a retroactive discussion for years and about um,
Stockholm syndrome.
Stockholm syndrome, and they 100% explore this. They don't say it outright, but
Right.
they explore this concept in this book more than they did in the first one. And it's just a story of Stockholm syndrome. He saved her, essentially.
He saved her. Saved
Saved
her.
her.
Let's be real.
She's
Saved her.
she's young, impressionable,
Mm-hmm.
literally starving. Family is destitute.
Mm-hmm.
He saves her and her family.
Mm-hmm.
She literally kills for him. So in her head, she is indebted to him,
Mm-hmm.
and he is this, you know, he can't do any wrong,
Right.
and she feels that she is in love with him,
Right.
when she has had no other experience. Like, it was alluded that she like had sex with somebody,
Yeah.
but that was not.
She
It
had
was
a
all just
thing.
that.
Just kind of a fling with one of the farmer's sons or something like
Yeah,
that.
but that was it. It wasn't romantic. But
She was holding out hope for him, but when she came back, she
no,
realized he married someone within like 5 days of her disappearing.
right. Yep,
Men.
I know. So I when I was reading, I kind of always look at. I am very character oriented and
Mhm.
story oriented. When I was reading ACOTAR, I saw it. Like, I saw that he is deeply traumatized based off of uh his and the fact that he had to send people, his soldiers, his like remaining family, over
Yeah.
the wall just for the chance of him finding his person
Yeah.
and breaking the curse. I mean,
That
that's just a slow drip drain torture.
yeah.
Um,
Well,
so
that does I don't think we discussed that in the first one. Like what happened to all these people, these,
they
who
are all presumed dead
yeah, but why? How?
because they get killed by other um Fey hunters.
Yeah, but I
They
mean,
get
we met a Fey hunter in the square. She trades the wolf pelt to one.
mhm.
Like, so that means that there is a 50-50 shot that she was not the first, um, for every
Person to do
person,
this
first
exactly thing.
female to kill a Fey, which means that not only has he sent his friends off to death,
Mhm.
but out of everyone he sent, 50% of them probably came back, um, or 50% of them, the killer was a female and thus came back to the castle that he
Mhm.
tried to woo.
Yeah, I wonder what happened to those people.
Exactly. That I mean, like that. I didn't even think about that when we were reading ACOTAR. Like he sent
Mhm.
so many people.
Yeah, he did. He had like a skeleton crew by the time
Right.
Feyre was introduced into the picture.
So
So
where are all these other women?
they're well,
Because I think they even
it,
discuss like he's done that a couple of times.
yes, and
Once the curse,
I
when
don't
they
know
could
if they
talk about it.
specifically said that there was another person that was similar to her, but I think the rules were he had to go into their home, um,
Oh,
and the person who killed the soldier
they had to
has to
kill the
had
Fae.
to have like have
Uh,
courage or
they
something,
had
and
to kill
she
the
was ready
Fae
to die.
and deeply hate the Fae and then fall in love with him.
Right. I mean,
So,
but the thing is that most of humanity do hate the Fae, so it's
right.
like 90% of them would have.
We don't
Yeah.
hate the Fae on
So
this channel. We respect them and wish them to leave us alone.
yes,
Um,
please. uh,
but still, like that just means that this is probably not the first time he had someone in the castle who
and I
he
wonder if they're
tried to
gonna explore that later.
seduce. Um, and what happened to these other ones? Um, but we're getting off track. We're supposed to be talking
Yes.
about Mist and Fury.
Yes.
So Rysand sends her back. The wedding is not talked about again.
No.
Like, that's what I mean. Like, I think Tamlin realizes that there's a crack somewhere.
There's something's happening. Yeah.
Because he doesn't bring it up. I think he brings it up maybe once or twice. But, like, it's like, but we'll do it when you're ready, you know.
He's trying to
I think
now retroactively kind of ease the reins a little bit.
Right.
Like,
not really.
No, he doesn't. Not really. I think it's perceived that way, but definitely not really.
And I know he's trying to break the bargain that she made with him, with Rysand.
Yeah, but that's out of a possessive nature. That's not because he is looking out for her interests.
So in these chapters, I do have a couple of green flags, and I do like them. Like the first one. Oh no, that's not the first one. That's the third one. Okay, the first green flag. Rys paused less than a foot away, sliding his hands into his pockets. The night didn't seem to ripple from him here, and he appeared, despite his perfection, almost normal. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. For saving you when you asked. So he said, "You're welcome, you know." And she says, "For what?" And he says, "For saving you when you asked." She says, "I didn't ask for anything." His stare dipped to my left hand. Rys gave no warning as he gripped my arm, snarling softly, and tore off the glove. His touch was like a brand, and I flinched, unyielding a step, but he held firm until he'd gotten both gloves off. "I heard you begging someone, anyone, to rescue you, to get you out. I heard you say no."
Yep. Now, did she say no out loud? I think she did a couple times.
Well, I don't know. Hold on, let me go back. Let's see.
I think she was like saying it under her breath. I don't know. Maybe I'm misreading it.
Okay. So, back up. It's chapter 4, page 42. Mm-hmm. Me and numbers. I was going to fall apart right here, right then, and they'd see precisely how ruined I was. "Help me, help me, help me," I begged someone, anyone. Begged Lucen, standing in the front row, his metal eye fixed on me. Begged Ianthe, face serene and patient and lovely within that hood. "Save me, please save me. Get me out, end this." Tamlin took a step toward me, concern shading those eyes. I retreated a step. "No." Tamlin's mouth tightened. The crowd murmur, silk streamers laden with globes.
So she said no.
Yeah, with globes of golden fey light twinkled into life above and around us. Ianthe said smoothly, "Come, bride, and be joined with your true love. Come, bride, and let good triumph at last." Good, I was not good. I was nothing, and my soul, my eternal soul, was damned. I tried to get my traitorous lungs to draw air so I could voice the word, "No, no." But I didn't have to say it. Thunder cracked behind me, as if two boulders had been hurled against each other. People screamed, falling back, a few vanishing outright as darkness erupted. I whirled, and through the night, drifting away like smoke on the wind, I found Rysand straightening the lapels of his black jacket. "Hello, Feyre, darling," he purred. I highlighted that as a quote because it just made me
love
go,
that. Yes. Yes, he has arrived.
Yes. I love the "hello, Feyre, darling." So no, she did say no. She did say get me out. She did say help me.
Okay.
I think I don't know if a lot of people realize, but she was having a panic attack. That is most definitely a panic attack. Now, because of the loveliness of drugs, I have not had one in quite a while. But the last one I had, I was having in therapy with my therapist, and he asked me something, and I could not stop my eyes whirling. I could not breathe, and I was just sitting here talking. Like, it will hit you that quick.
Yep.
And it took him, like, probably about 30 seconds to realize what was happening, and this was like our first real session together. I felt so bad. I was like, "I'm so sorry." He's like, no, That's why we're here. We're talking
Hmm.
about your anxiety. Like, that is a full on panic attack.
Yes.
Um, I am surprised, honestly, she didn't fall. Because when I have an
Right.
anxiety attack or a panic attack, like I crumple.
Hmm.
I don't know about anybody else.
I've had, I think, two, and I don't know. I think it's different for everybody how it
Mm-hmm.
manifests. Um, but I haven't crumpled. I mostly like dissociated and
Yeah.
hyperventilated, and I do the same thing. I look around looking for an escape.
Yeah.
It's you feel like you're dying.
Yeah.
It's a
Um,
fate I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. It's not
it's
a fun thing.
you feel very much out of yourself, out of
Yeah.
control of yourself. I tend to hide from my husband.
Hmm.
Like, he's witnessed me having a couple of them, and I straight up just go into the bathroom and shut the door. And I don't have a very big bathroom,
Hmm.
like, at all. It's a fucking closet. Um,
Hmm.
and one time, we were actually in the shower, and I had to get out of the shower, and I basically like just crumpled into our bedroom, which is not very far from our bathroom, but crumpled in our bedroom. And he came in and he was like, "What is going on?" And I
Hmm.
was like, "I'm fine. Just leave me alone." You, I tend to like become a ball. Just let me be. Don't touch me. Don't try to talk to me. Just, you know. And I think him showing up and just being Rysand kind of
Hmm.
helped her out of it a lot quicker.
Yeah,
I've
I
had
think
panic
so.
attacks that just lasted like for a half an hour.
But it's nice to have someone to anchor you. I had
Yes.
I had one at my old job, and I had one of my coworkers recognize the situation, and
Mm-hmm.
she pulled me outside, and she put one hand on each shoulder, and just to stabilize me and be like, "You're gently walk
Yeah.
talk me through it,"
Yeah.
and that helped so much.
Yeah.
So it's good to have someone there. It really helps.
It
So
does. And somebody who knows you well enough to not push your boundaries, because it's very
yes,
easy. I've had panic attacks where somebody was like, "Okay, well, they tried grabbing me and moving me." I'm like,
no,
"No, it's if you are in a situation where somebody around you is having a panic attack, speak softly, speak
mhm,
lowly, help them focus on something else. It really does
mhm,
help. One of the tricks that I learned was, what are like 5 things that I can see? What are 3 things I can feel? And
yep.
what's one thing I can taste? You know,
My therapist told me that one as well.
my therapist was like, okay, well, try doing a 3 count in and a 6 count out type of thing.
Okay.
Um, Thankfully, I haven't needed to do that in a while because,
Mhm.
yay, drugs. Um, but yeah, so I think it was beautifully written here. It
Mhm.
wasn't evident. I know I've tried writing panic attacks in my stories before, and it's very, very easy to fuck up. Pardon
Yeah,
my French.
it's all
Um,
right.
and very, very easy to get wrong and seem disingenuous. This
Mhm.
felt like I was right there with her. Like,
Oh
when
yeah.
she was going through it, I really did, like, I noticed my breath had sped up, my heart
Hmm.
rate had increased. Um, but he did rescue her
Just
in just like that little way.
yes, I think S.J. Moss is just based on this book alone. I think she is fantastic at writing and explaining trauma in general,
Yes.
and how it influences you to do things
Mm-hmm.
it, and then your behavior and everything. So I um, definitely have respect for that because that is very difficult to put across respectfully and accurately. So
Yes. Um, so what happens? So she comes back. Things don't get better.
no,
Um, and I think there's one more visit before she decides that she's done.
yes, she finds out that he put a force field around the castle,
Oh, that's right.
and
Yeah.
she tries to leave and physically cannot
Cannot do
leave.
it.
And she said,
Nope, not it.
"No, I'm." And I don't know if her time was up at that same point, or
He
she
sends Rysand sends someone to fetch her.
got it.
Um uh yeah, he sends his cousin to go fetch her
That's
because
right.
there are laws that prohibit him from taking a claimed mate or whatever it is.
Like just himself. Yeah,
Yes,
he can't
because
show up.
he's a High Lord and it would be stealing from another High Lord.
Right.
Um but things work
More
out,
shows up.
kind of. Yes,
Yeah.
Moore shows up. We get to meet Moore.
Moore is my favorite character.
I
I
knew
love
she would
Morrigan.
be.
Yeah.
I knew she would be. As soon as I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be a stand for Cass."
Yes.
Okay, so chapter 13. She says, by law, as she being the author, by law and protocol, he said, stretching out his long legs, things would have become very complicated and very messy if I had been the one to walk into that house and take you. Smashing that shield was fine, but Moore had to go in on her own 2 feet, render the sentries unconscious through her own power, and carry you over the border into another court before I could bring you here. Or else Tamlin would have free rein to march his forces into my lands to reclaim you, and as I have no interest in an internal war, we had to do everything by the book. When I go back, she says, as your presence here isn't part of our monthly requirement, you are under no obligation to go back. He rubbed at his temple, unless you wish to.
Mm-hmm.
I was like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
somebody knows a loophole.
Yes.
I
Healthy
thought,
boundaries for the
yes.
win.
One of the things that became very evident very quickly, as of chapter, I think it was 5 or so,
Mm-hmm.
he gives her a choice. And that's not something, like, in thinking back to ACOTAR, like,
Mm-hmm.
she doesn't get a lot of choices.
No. She's kind of on rails. She's
Right.
along for the ride.
I'm going to borrow something my husband says about D&D games. Yeah, you're going to climb on that train. Like,
Yes.
there's a one-way track, and you're going to climb on that train, even if the DM has to beat you over the head with it. And
Yep.
Tamlin was the DM. Those train tracks he laid very deep
Mm-hmm.
and had no intention of putting a switch in. So,
Yeah.
yay for healthy boundaries. Yay
Mm-hmm.
for supportive characters.
Mm-hmm.
What comes next? How do you feel about the time that she spends in Valeris?
I think so. I wrote specifically that there is a comparison to the first time that she meets Rhysand and the first time she sees Valeris. And it's almost the same exact quote. He is the most beautiful man she has ever seen. This is the most beautiful city I have ever seen. So it's like just this reaction. I knew right away. I was like, yeah, I mean, this Rhysand, of course, is endgame, but like
Yeah.
she's in love with this city already. This is home for her. The adventure to the art district was very
Mm-hmm.
sad. I was hoping that she would eventually get over her trauma and maybe explore her art again, but I knew
Mm-hmm.
that was going to be a long time coming. And in
Yeah.
fact, I don't even think it happens in this book. Maybe a little bit, but
Yeah, it
uh,
does happen. She does end up painting
okay.
later on, which actually is one of my other favorite quotes. I marked 4 favorite quotes in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And this, I didn't know it. Okay, so they have been in Valeris for a while. She has realized that she has got pieces of all the High Lord's magic with her, which
Yeah.
means that because Rhysand is a hybrid between high fae, and I can't remember the name of the race, but the winged boys.
Yes.
We get to meet them, the whole cast: Amor, Airman, Cassian, and Azrael.
Yeah.
They are off doing something with the winged tribes,
Hmm.
and something happens and she needs to get away from everybody. Like, she just can't handle it. So Moore takes her to the cabin, their
Yeah.
secret hideaway. And while she's there by herself. She stumbles upon some like house paints, I think
Hmm.
it is, and she just doodles up the cabin.
The entire
Kind kind of
cabin.
like what she did at her home as a child.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, I didn't even think about that. But yes, she does the same thing.
yes, and there was a meme that I sent you after we finished this.
Hmm.
It wasn't. I don't know if it was a meme or if it was commentary about, like, does everybody? Do you get the impression that everybody looks at her art and is like, "You did something"? Like, it's not that great.
You did something.
You did something.
Something is here. Something has been done. Though I don't know. I don't know how slowly when we go through the book, I can just go to the main point, the main spoiler, where what happened, what caused her to go to this cabin,
Go
is
ahead,
that
do it.
they had been traveling together. They got attacked, severely attacked, um, and she he got hit with ash arrows. And
Oh,
the
that's
ash
right.
arrows, if you remember, are the only thing that could like kill a fae, or one of the only things that could kill a
Right.
fae that is human made. She searches far and wide, or she hides him in a cave and goes out. She has to think quickly because he's actively dying. She finds a Sariel. What is that creature called? That
Oh, yes. Oh, what? Hold on. It might
it's
be
in the
here.
first book. She
Yeah, she
traps
traps
one,
him again.
traps
I
another. I
I
don't know if it's the same one. I
I
think.
think it's the same one. I
Yeah,
think they
I think it's the
allude that
same
it's the
one.
same freaking one.
But
Hold
she
on.
traps.
I'm
Yeah.
using this because it has quips from it, and this is a lot
Yeah.
easier to flip through.
Yes. Yeah.
The cereal.
Cereal. I knew it was close. The
This is what it
cereal.
looks like in the book, by the way.
I have no. Okay, that is not what I
Not
thought
what
it
I
looked
thought it
like.
was.
Not at all. So she traps the cereal again, and it's the same one in hopes to find a cure for the ash arrows, so to
Mm-hmm.
save his life. So she finds out that it's like a certain plant in the area. But the Saria also lets slip, oh, this will save your mate. And
Right.
she's like,
What?
excuse me?
Ex-
Pardon me? What
Start
do you mean?
over.
And she's just like, the Sariel's like, well, you didn't know that, huh? Like, oh, okay. So, of course, she is pissed
Right, because yet
that
again, somebody is holding out information on
information,
her.
which is a trauma response too. Like,
Yes.
of course, she doesn't want to be lied to and manipulated because she's been manipulated pretty much her entire time in this Fey land.
Right.
So, to find out that her best friend, essentially, slash I don't know if they're romantically involved at this point.
I don't
Not
think
barely.
so. Like, I think they're
It's alluded
alluding.
that they like flirt, but it's
Yes.
not super hardcore flirting at this point.
Right.
Um, so she goes and saves him, drops him off at his castle, and pieces out for a couple weeks. I think 4 weeks or something?
Something
It's
like
like a
that.
month.
I think
Yeah.
so. And in that time, I was looking to see if they actually included a picture of her doodling all over the cabin,
Oh, that's a good one
but they
too.
didn't.
Oh, and when you were saying that, I wonder if it is a response, harkening back to trauma. It's a response for her to process the information because when she was a child, and it was her way of escaping and processing by
Right.
doodling on her
Right,
furniture
because
and
her
doodling in
mother
her
had
house.
just passed. She
Yep.
was, for some reason, the one responsible to take care of everyone. And this was her one thing. Like the one time her sisters decided to do something kind and non-selfish was to get her a paint set. So she just tried to make their space lovely because they had lost so much beforehand. So
But
yeah,
she does the same thing.
she
She hides
does.
in this castle or in this cabin to process all this information. She realizes that she absolutely loves him versus Tamlin, and
Yeah,
Tamlin wasn't real love. It
right.
was this perception of love.
Calf love.
Um,
I'll call it
yeah.
calf love because although she didn't love the the farm boy, she
Hmm.
was very hurt to find that he had replaced her so quickly. And
Hmm.
that through the first book, she's like, I just got to get back to him. Maybe we can still get married. Like she recognized that she didn't love him, but she could eventually become in love with him.
Hmm. Hmm.
But with Tamlin, it was different. It was calf love. It was like the crush you have in school. Like you're gonna doodle your name all over your book with his or hers entwined with yours, and you're gonna
Hmm.
dream and stuff like that. That's all calf love, and I fully, wholeheartedly think that Tamlin was a calf love brought on by
Stop.
compound trauma, Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
Um, because like she was feeling things for him before
Hmm.
uh going under the mountain. It wasn't until he sent
Yeah.
her away that she actually admitted it to herself.
Yeah.
um
But that
but
was a long process to
yes,
get there because she had to process her trauma first
right, the trauma
and
of her family.
forgive, yeah, her family, the people she had to kill.
Well, no, this is before the mountain,
Oh,
before the mountain.
okay. Before the mountain.
in
Okay.
the first in the first book,
Hmm.
he sends her off back
I
home,
see.
and she's with her family. She finds out about the farm boy marrying somebody else, and she realizes then that she loves Tamlin, and
Yes.
goes
Yeah.
back and finds out he's been taken under the mountain,
Yeah.
and has been there for a while now. But still, like that, I would categorize that whole thing as a calf love,
Hmm.
dealing with the trauma of not being wanted by her family and used by her family, which,
Yeah.
like, I remember texting my coworker as soon as I met her family, like, her family's shit, man. And he was like, yeah, they're not great. It
They're
gets better.
not.
It doesn't get much better, but they're not great. I was like, oh, thanks. Um, so yeah, like in the cabin, I think she realizes that it was it may have been real in the moment for her at that time, but
Hmm.
as she sits there and just kind of sorts through her feelings, she notices a difference between the love she has for Rhysand and the love she has for Tamlin.
Yeah. She
Um,
does.
and Moore shows up and's
Hmm.
like, look what you did. You did
Yeah. Look at all the
something.
pretty things you put on the wall. And okay, since we're already going into spoiler territory, when she painted the eyes of Azriel and Cassian up on the ceiling, uh, and I think more too. No, Amryn. The Amryn in the
There,
middle
yeah, Amren's eyes. Yeah,
is Amryn's eyes because she seems to be the one that's watching over them
right.
all the time. But then she also paints uh, Azriel and Cassian on either side of her, I think too. Um, I was like, oh God, please, please, for the love of God, do not kill off these characters. Like, I was
Yeah,
very scared, because they also, before they had this festival in the night court where they all dressed up and uh, hung out as a friend group. Like, these are some. She realizes that she loves the city, and she would do anything to help the city,
yeah,
basically.
yeah. I think she
And
realizes she loves the city because of what it stands for before she
yeah,
realizes she loves Tamlin.
Rhysand.
Rhysand. I'm sorry. Yes, that's
Yeah,
what I meant.
yeah, no worries. Um, but that same night they were talking about, they were showing all these Azrael, Cassian, Amryn, and more all in a really good light, and I'm like, oh, my spidey senses are going off.
Mm-hmm.
Please do not kill these characters. Please
Right.
don't kill them. So yeah. So they
Um,
get injured, but they don't die
right.
yet.
Um,
Yet. I really
yet.
hope that they don't, but I am scared for their future.
So I'm not sure if I'm actually thinking of where this quote was, but one of the quotes that I have marked that I fell in love with it before I knew it was in the series.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I have a sticker of it on my Kindle, because uh, I've been dealing I've been dealing with depression almost my entire life at this point, and anxiety. And when I started the Probably Smut book club, I actually just ordered stickers,
Mm-hmm.
and I got a random assortment because I love me a mystery bag.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the stickers was "Don't let the hard days win."
Yeah, it's from this
I
book.
didn't know it was from this book. So the whole
I didn't
quotes
either.
are, "There are good days and hard days for me even now. Don't let the hard days win." Um I love that. If I was going to get a ACOTAR series tattoo, it would probably be "Don't let the hard days win." Um
It's so
maybe
good.
maybe that's the idea we have for our literary tattoo, Cass.
Hey, I'm down.
Don't let the hard days win.
My one of my favorite quotes is from Resand. It's the issue isn't whether he loved you, it's how much. Too much. Love can be a poison.
Dude, I have that too.
Mhm. Mhm.
The issue isn't whether he loved you, it's how much. Too much love can be a poison.
Yeah.
And then he was gone. Yes, that was one of my marked ones as well.
Mhm.
Oh, it's so good. Like, there sometimes it's so, I see him in my Kindle, like heck of people highlighting something, and I'm just like,
Same, yeah.
oh, that's just so cheesy. But sometimes they're just awesome.
Mhm.
Um, okay. So we're getting through the meat of the book here.
Yes.
Um, Now I keep seeing stuff about chapter 52 or 54. I
Ooh, you're gonna have to remind me about that
Yeah,
one.
I don't know. Um,
Are
so
you talking about 42? Because that was my favorite chapter of the whole book.
let me see. 42.
That's when they go to the Court of Nightmares, and she has
Oh.
to put on an act, and it's very hot.
No, I don't think it is.
Mhm.
Um 53 is
Okay.
literally 2 pages.
Oh, okay. Is it chapter 55?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like, everybody keeps.
Everyone's talking about chapter 55.
Is it chapter 55? 52 is the start of part 3, the House of Mists.
Okay.
This is
Maybe it's
this is
just when they
after
finally
where she
do
finds
things.
out about the mate thing.
Chapter 55 is mate soup chapter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right, let me get to that. I did not. There was a point where I stopped marking in this book.
Yeah.
Hey,
Because
it
you
was
couldn't
just
put it down.
I couldn't. Yeah. So, chapter 55. I watched him consume every spoonful, his eyes darting between where I stood and the soup. When he was done, he set his spoon down. "Aren't you going to say anything?" he said at last. "I was going to tell you what I decided the moment I saw you on the threshold." Reese twisted in his seat toward me. "And now?" Aware of every breath, every movement, I sat in his lap.
Aww. It was like the so heart touching, the whole thing. Like, and him. I think I wrote this down too. The fact that he was able to sit down and just have this whole emotional speech and kind of explain where his mind was at of holding this information from her. It was all respectful and respectful of her.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't want to be Tamlin. I think he saw Tamlin as he wasn't trying to. It was a trauma
Mm-hmm.
response, but it was all manipulative. And Rhysand from the very beginning wanted this to occur, even though he knew from the very beginning that this person was his mate. He wanted her to realize it organically. He didn't want to steal her away and
Right.
keep her in his
Well,
castle.
he knew after she became High Fae on the balcony.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah,
I
that's right.
think.
That was it. Well, no, he
That's
was.
when he knew
I thought
he
he was
was.
told that a human was going to be. I don't know. Maybe I'm misconstruing information.
I don't remember.
But you're right. It was at the end where he was about to fade away back to his
Right.
castle. He's just like, wait, what? And then the book ends.
Yes. So,
Um,
but I think I knew he knew there was a connection before then, because in
yes,
chapter 54, he says that, I'm going to read to you again. I hope you don't mind.
I like the reading.
But your final child came, and when she started torturing you, something snapped in a way I couldn't explain, only that seeing you bleeding and screaming undid me. It broke me at last, and I knew as I picked up that knife to kill her, I knew right then what you were. I knew that you were my mate. Okay, there we go. And you were in love with another male, and had destroyed yourself to save him, and that I didn't care. If you were going to die, it was going to die with you. I couldn't stop thinking it over and over as you screamed, as I tried to kill her. You were my mate, my mate, my mate.
Mm-hmm.
But then she snapped your neck.
Mm-hmm.
Tears rolled down his face. And I felt you die, he whispered. Tears were sliding down my own cheeks. And this beautiful, wonderful thing that had come into my life, this gift from the cauldron, it was gone. In my desperation, I clung to that bond, not the bargain. The bargain was nothing. The bargain was like a cobweb. But I grabbed that bond between us and I tugged. I willed you to hold on, to stay with me, because if we could get free, and then all seven of us were there,
Mm-hmm.
we could bring you back. And I didn't care if I had to slice into all of their minds to do it. I'd make them save you. His hands were shaking. You'd freed us with your last breath, and my power, I wrapped my power around that bond, the mating bond. I could feel you flickering there, holding on. Home had been at the end of the bond. I'd told the bone carver. Not Tamlin, not the spring court, but Rhysand.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess he did know then, but I guess also because, like, it's very, it's not subtle. Like, at the end of the first book, the author makes it a point to note that he reacted to something.
Yes.
So, like, he admits that he knew that she was his mate at the moment of her death.
Mm-hmm.
But then what was the reaction on the balcony?
That she reciprocated his feelings.
Maybe.
That's how I interpreted it.
So this is the next page, the end of chapter 40.
That she wasn't
54.
actually in love with Tamlin, I bet.
It killed me, Feyre, to send you back, to see you waste away month by month. It killed me to know he was sharing your bed. Not just because you were my mate, but because He glanced down and then up at me again. I knew I was in love with you the moment I picked up the knife to kill Amarantha. When you finally came here, I decided I wouldn't tell you any of it. I wouldn't let you out of the bargain, because your hatred was better than facing the two alternatives. That you felt nothing for me, or that you might feel something similar, and if I let myself love you, you would be taken from me. The way my family was, the way my friends were, so I didn't tell you. I watched as you faded away until that day, the day he locked you up. I would have killed him if he had been there, but I broke some very, very fundamental rules in taking you away. Amren, said if I got you to admit that we were mates, it would keep any trouble from our door, but I couldn't force the bond on you. I couldn't try to seduce you into accepting the bond either, even if it gave Tamlin license to wage war on me. You had been through so much already, I didn't want you to think that everything I did was to win you, just to keep my hands safe, or my land safe. But I couldn't stop being around you and loving you and wanting you. I still can't stay away.
He did it the right way.
He did. He let her...
He did it the right way. Given her trauma
given his own, like, I
Yeah.
think we also forget that, like, this
He chose
whole
the
chapter,
harder path, the
he
more
did.
difficult path.
This
Yeah.
whole chapter, chapter 54, is him telling her what happened with him to be in Amarantha's court, all the way up until the moment of the wedding. And in that first book, he tries to play it off, and he even explains why he does try to play it off, because him being in Amarantha's court meant that she wasn't looking at Valeris,
Yeah.
that his friends were still alive and wouldn't be hurt, because I think people I think people, but I think it goes, the courts forget that his father, even though he was a terrible person, defied the king of Hybern and Amarantha. They fought to save humans and not enslave them. So part of his family's punishment was Rysand being at Amarantha's side to basically torture. And I believe that also held him back from doing what he instinctively wanted to do with Feyre, because of the choices that he had been denied under Amarantha's servitude.
Yeah.
I think that plays a big part too.
Yes, 1000%.
Okay, so we've reconciled. Things have gotten dirty.
Yes.
I think at this
point
things have gotten dirty.
Yes. Well, it's after that. After the soup scene is the mating scene.
Bound cow.
Yeah, and okay, also by this point, because they're still
trying to get pieces together to defeat the Cauldron, to defeat King Hybern, which we haven't even touched on, really.
Yes, we haven't.
There's just so many other things to talk about.
There's just so much. Honestly, this going forward, I know this one's a big beefy boy, but I don't know if the rest of the books are bigger.
There is a mammoth.
Okay, so I think that's the next one, right?
The fourth book is the mammoth.
Oh, the fourth one. Okay.
A Court of Silver Flames.
So we may have to split this into 2 videos for the bigger novels.
Yeah.
Just because there's just so much to get through. What we didn't touch on is in order to warn the human civilization of the Hybern and how things are kind of going south in the Fae
Fae politics.
Fae politics. They needed to figure out a way to warn the queens of the high queens, or whatever they're called. They're human queens.
They needed regions. They needed to figure out a way to stop Hybern, but also let the human nations be aware that a threat was coming. The reason that the queens came in is because the queens were holders of the book.
Yes.
Half of the book, I should say. Half of the book. Which would nullify the cauldron, which is being used as a weapon.
Yes. By the king.
By King of Hybern.
Hybern, yeah.
So yeah, they decide to become emissaries and try to plead with the queens to hand over their half of the book. The other half is at the Court of Summer.
Yeah.
Which they get.
Yes.
And she feels horrible about how she does that too.
I know, it's so it's sad, but
it's really sad.
But the thing is harkening back to trauma, they were both acting out of fear of their own trauma, even though this king probably would have been like, okay, you get me in on it and I will help you, but they couldn't risk it.
I got the feeling that the High Lord of Summer Court was very well, he was new to his position as well.
Yeah, he's a young king,
and he liked Feyre on a personal level, which I don't think outside of Rhysand and the group.
Tamlin.
Well, no, like I think Tamlin was in love with the version of her that he built in his mind.
That's true.
And the High Lord of the Summer Court got to meet the new her.
Yes.
The new
And he
her
liked
that was
her.
affected by the trauma. By compounded trauma, I should say. Like, he took her as she was right now. He didn't know any other version of her, and I think she really appreciated that. And that's why she felt so bad, because he was being so kind.
And forthright with his feelings.
Yes.
Too. Things that maybe a more seasoned king would probably have a hard time
admitting,
talking about or admitting. He was, and it wasn't a manipulation tactic. It was just more like, I'm opening up to you. I like you as a person, you know.
And I'll say it again. These fae are not what we were promised.
No.
There's no trickery of words. There's no, you know, like, trapping and bargains. Like, I don't. It's like a skin was just put over these characters for the sake of saying, oh yeah, they're fae. But if anybody who's actually studied folklore, this is not how they would be.
No. They're usually very tricky, and
I feel very bait and switched.
Well, however,
I mean, I'm just saying,
but you don't.
Saying.
I think that's also part of it, though. It's part of the whole overarching story, is that the people who are actually doing a lot of the trickery were the humans. And that comes into play in this book as well.
So how about we get to the end, because that's where it all culminates.
It does, but we missed a huge part, and that is Feyre's sisters are part of the emissaries.
Yes.
So because Tamlin had set up this stronghold for the sisters as part of their bargain to keep them alive, and for Feyre. And so, but they're like rich, and her father is back in the trade business and is very wealthy and well off.
Yep.
So they're not super high society. But they're high up in the human society now. Back to their original glory before things went south prior to the Court of Thorns and Roses.
Right.
So they get the idea to set up this emissary and have that home be the meeting house, which Nesta is not extremely happy about this, because she's got a lot of that xenophobia against Fae, worse than anybody else pretty much in the entire village. And she's fiercely protective of Elaine, and not so much Feyre, which is sad, but definitely sad. Of Elaine. I think it's because it is said multiple times that Elaine reminds them of their mother.
Which I don't understand that, because every time Feyre describes their mother, she's cold, she's unfeeling, she's uncaring about her children.
It's more like Nesta.
Yeah.
Nesta is like her mom.
Yeah.
But she does come to understand Nesta. Feyre does understand Nesta and her motivations, and
she's
eventually
dealing with her own trauma. Everybody's dealing with trauma. Trauma for you. Trauma for everyone.
Yes. And it's a main undercurrent of this whole series so far.
Yeah. We're only on book 2.
We're only on book 2, so we're on a wild ride. I know that for sure. So we do. They meet Azriel and Cassian. They have these meetings with the queens prior to the ending, where they try to convince them to relinquish the other half of the book, which the queens are in possession of. They say no, basically outright deny them, saying that this is ridiculous. How can we trust you?
And these queens are almost fae themselves. That's the weird part about it.
Yeah. You get ick vibes from them immediately. They only care about themselves. They're very... even Nesta under her breath was like, you guys are bitches.
You guys... I mean, they go so far as to, well, I mean, we will protect ourselves in the south.
Mhm.
Like, let
You can
what
protect your own.
yeah,
We'll be
protect.
fine.
We'll be fine. Those villages along the wall, they don't matter to us. And they're like,
Yeah.
these guys are not
Um,
coming from our lands. They're coming from other lands.
yeah.
They're going to come to you. Oh, well, we can protect ourselves.
Which should have been
Okay.
red flag number one.
Right.
Uh, Humanity is very well aware of how underpowered they are versus the Fae.
Right.
So, why do you think that
Yeah,
you guys would stand a chance?
their reasoning, and of course we figure out why later, but their
Mhm.
reasoning through the whole thing just doesn't make any sense.
Not at all. It
Like,
should be alarm bells going off
they're
crazy for
very
them.
blasé about the whole thing,
Yeah.
and like I
So,
was
and then we
so
find out
pissed
that,
reading it. I was like, you guys are assholes.
yeah. And I thought, I mean, it's mostly focused around Feyre and Rysand
Mm-hmm.
relationship and their trauma. But, and I'm sure in the next couple novels, since they're already established,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be mostly about the conflict.
Right.
And well, we're going to get to the end. So let's get there. Let's go there. We have all the pieces.
Right.
It has not come without a lot of strife and uh, sacrifice. They
Mm-hmm.
had to give the queen the information of the secret city in the night court
With
in
Valeris,
exchange for the book, which
they
was not
denied.
willingly given after that fact.
Yeah.
They left, and then the Golden Queen,
The youngest one, I think it was,
the youngest one,
just
uh,
kind of like was like, don't tell anybody, but here
don't
you
tell anybody,
go.
but here you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then she also wrote a note saying like, "Don't trust the others" or something like that.
Right.
And they're like, "Okay, well, noted, but thank you."
Yep.
Um,
They all go
they
home.
their whole
And
city gets ransacked
yeah, by Hybern.
by
Like,
Hybrid.
and they don't know how because there's shielding over the city.
Yeah.
The city has been a secret since it was built.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody who knows about it leaves the city, because it's just so idyllic. Um,
And the fact that it was next to immediately after this information was given,
right.
they figured out that there's something was compromised.
I still don't know how they would have known where it was. Like, it does. It's not
I
like
know.
the eye showed them a map on where it was located. It just kind of showed them a preview, like a span over of the city. So how the hell did they discern where it was?
My thought process is that they probably have been looking for this city for centuries,
Mm,
and they had pinned it down to like maybe 5 spots in the world.
okay,
And then
I could believe
finally
that.
viewing that information, they were like, "Oh, cool! It's at this location that we already figured it,
Right.
narrowed it down to."
Okay.
So
So.
that was obviously that's not explained, but to me that made made perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we get to how did we get to the king? Did we get captured? I forget.
I forget too. Ugh. We gotta not do that again.
I know. That's okay. Well, we're getting there. We're
we're
getting there.
we're getting better. Okay, so hold on. So chapter 60, we have Valeris is secure. Rice said at the back in the black hours of the night. The wards the cauldron took out have been remade. So the cauldron was used to take down the wards to the city.
Yes.
We had not stopped to rest until now. For hours, we worked along with the rest of the city to heal, to patch up, to hunt down answers any way we could. And now
Feyre
we were
figured
all...
out that the sisters were taken too, which is another motivation to get there.
Yes, that's right. Okay. Valeris might be secure, Cassian replied, not even bothering to lift his head from where it rested against the back of the chair. But for how long? Hybern knows this place, thanks to those worm queens. Who else will they sell information to? How long until the other courts come sniffing? or Hybern uses that cauldron again to take down our defenses. If we all go to Hybern to destroy the cauldron, who will defend the city? That's what it is. They decide to go to Hybern itself.
Just to knock it out of the way. They needed to address it immediately. So.
Yes. So, they decide they're going to go to Hybern instead of waiting for Hybern to come to them. Because it already has, and they were unprepared. I'm looking to see if there's a map.
Suffered a lot of casualties. It was sad.
Okay, so yeah, Hybern is an island that's not far from them at all.
Okay.
Holy shit. I'm looking at this map. I know you can't because you don't have one of the books. But the area of the courts, so much more vast than like mortal lands.
Yeah. But I don't know if that's a complete map. I think that's just the top of the map. Because I remember, I know what it kind of looks like.
Yeah.
I think that's just the northern area.
Well, no. So the Perinthian is its own island. Think of it as it looks vaguely British, England-like, and then Hybern is like Ireland off to its west. I'm going to show you. My watermark is on the page, so forgive me for that. So that's its own island. Its whole thing is an island, and then there's Hybern. So it's not a very hard journey, especially not from the Night Court.
Right. But yes, that's right. They lift off, and they are flown.
Yes, they fly to Hybern.
Yeah.
And their plan of attack is to find the cauldron. Use the Book of Breathings, I think it is. And nullify the cauldron, and instead they are trapped.
Yep.
They are trapped by Hybern and his guards, and by one of the dudes from our Amarantha's court. I think it was Amarantha's court, wasn't it?
Yes. What's his face? He's like
Joran.
A creature.
Jurian.
Jurian, yeah. Oh, he was the guy that has the eyeball.
Yeah.
He was, Amarantha's ring.
Yes. None of us dared strike the king of Hybern, where he stalked ahead, leading the way. He'd taken the cauldron with him, vanishing it with a snap of his fingers and a wry look at me. We knew the king wasn't bluffing. It'd taken one move on their part for Azrael to die. So they are captured at this point. Azrael has been wounded. Cassian is still standing, if I remember correctly. Rise is also standing, but subdued. And I think Moore is there.
Moore is there.
I don't think Amryn is. I don't remember, though. If Amryn was there, she'd take them out. I do remember him saying that a couple of times.
Amryn is, like, overpowered, so I think Amryn was left to defend the city, because she is,
that's right. That's right. She could do it on her
most
own.
Powerful, yeah. Next to Rhysand. So, Lucian and Tamlin are there.
Yep.
They are there.
Before it, Jorian leering at our backs, the throne room doors shut. The king said to no one in particular, "Now that I've upheld my end of the bargain, I expect you to uphold yours." From the shadows near the side door, two figures emerged. I began shaking my head as if I could unsee it, as Lucian and Tamlin stepped into the light. And that's the end of chapter 65.
Ugh, so awful. And it's all a ploy to get Feyre back. And at this point, there is no forgiveness with Tamlin.
Held out a hand. Feyre, an order like I was no better than a summoned dog.
Yeah. No, and at this point, because he was so desperate in his possession of her, he
made a deal
with
the devil.
Yes, he went against everything that he had told her he was against.
Yeah.
Um, so there is no going back from this. um, and I'm sure Lucian along the way was like, "What are you doing, man?" Like,
Well, in
uh,
fact, he says, when he commands her to come to him, Lucian glanced between all of us, face paling. Tamlin, he murmured. But Tamlin didn't lower the hand stretched towards me.
because
I'm taking
because
you home.
because Lucian sees that she is one of them.
Yeah.
She is a part of their family and their court. He sees what Tamlin refuses to see.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he has since the beginning. So
He has
Mad
the
res-
he has the unfortunate position of being Tamlin's best friend and knowing the absolute best and worst of him,
yeah.
and seeing someone being brought in under false pretenses. But I mean, bros before hoes, right?
Yeah, I know. I don't think it's more of that. I think he still feels indebted to Tamlin too,
Oh yeah, no,
for
no,
his
no.
life, and it's. I think it's a lot of that, and I don't know if we want to break that yet, because the queens are there.
Mm-hmm.
Queens also double cross them. They are the ones that inform them about the city. Uh, they have um, Nesta and Elaine tied up,
Yes. Oh, here we go.
and
Here we go. I made let's see, hold on. Ah, the king said to me, clicking his tongue. That, look at you, a child of all 7 courts, like and unlike all. How the
Mhm.
cauldron purrs in your presence. Did you plan to use it, destroy it? With that book you could do anything you wished. I didn't say anything. The king shrugged. You'll tell me soon enough. I've made no bargain with you. No, but your master did, so you will obey. Molten
Ugh.
rage poured into me. I hissed at Tamlin. If you bring me from here, you will take me from my mate. I will destroy you. I will destroy your court and everything you hold dear. Tamlin's lips thinned, but he simply said, You don't know what you're talking about. Lucian cringed. The king jerked
Oof.
his chin to the guards by the side door through which Tamlin and Lucian had appeared. No, she doesn't. The doors opened again. There will be no destroying, the king went on, as women walked through those doors. 4 women, 4 humans, the 4 remaining queens. Because, the king said, the queen's guard falling into rank behind them, hauling something in the core of their formation. You will find Feyre Arch- Archeron?
Archeron.
That this is
I
your
think that's the last name.
that it is in your best interest to behave. The 4 queens sneered at us with hate in their eyes, hate, and parted to let their personal guards through. Fear like I'd never known entered my heart as the men dragged my sisters gagged and bound before the king of Hybern.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was the end of 64.
And I don't remember the stipulation as to. I think the sisters were there so that Feyre didn't act up and held up the king's end of the bargain. Um, but they end up throwing the sisters one by one into the cauldron
Uh,
because Feyre still refuses to leave, I think, with Tamlin.
Liar, I hissed and whirled on the queens, daring
Yeah.
only a step away from Rise. They are liars, and if you do not let my sisters go, I will slaughter. Do you hear the threats, the language they use in the night court? The king said to the mortal queens. Their guards now around us in a half circle. Slaughter, ultimatums. They wish to end life. I desire to give it. So
Okay.
he was saying that the night court were liars and they weren't trying to be peaceful. They weren't trying to stop him, but he was.
He's making a show
Right.
to the human queens.
The eldest queen said to him, refusing
Yeah.
to acknowledge my words. Then show us. Prove this gift you mentioned. Rysand tugged me back against him. He said quietly to the queen, You're a fool. King cut in. Is she? Why submit to old age and ailments when what I offer is so much better? He waved a hand toward me. Eternal youth. Do you deny the benefits? A mortal queen becomes one who might reign forever. Of course, there are risks. The transition can be difficult, but a strong willed individual could survive. So he's using the sisters to as a demonstration. In fact, it
Got it.
goes on to say the ancient queen lifted her chin. Show us, demonstrate
Mhm.
it can be done, that it is safe. She had spoken of eternal youth that day and had spat in my face about it, the two-faced bitch.
Mhm.
The
Yep.
king nodded. Why did you think I asked my dear friend Inante to see who Feyre Archeron would appreciate having with her for eternity? Even as horror filled my ears with roaring silence, I glanced at the queens, the question no doubt written on my face. The king explained, Oh, I asked them first. They deemed it too uncouth to portray two young, misguided women. Iante had no such qualms. Consider it
Mhm.
my wedding present for you both, he added to Tamlin. But Tamlin's face tightened. What? The king
Mhm.
cocked his head, savoring every word. I think the high priestess was waiting until your return to tell you. But didn't you ever ask why she believed I might be able to break the bargain? Why
Mhm.
she had so many musings on the idea? So many millennia have the high priestesses been forced on their knees for the high lords. And during those years she dwelled in that foreign court. Such an open mind she has.
Mhm.
Once I painted for her a portrait of a Corinthian free of high lords, where the high priestesses might rule with grace and wisdom. She didn't take much convincing. She sold out Pharaoh's family to you. Lucian's
Mhm.
face had slackened. I had told
Yep.
Anante everything about my sisters. She had asked who they were, where they lived, and
Uh,
I'd been so stupid, so broken. I had fed her every detail.
I mean, she was her only friend, really.
Tried to be her only friend.
Yeah.
I think at a certain point, Feyre kind of knew something was fishy with her.
Or just in her gut. Yeah.
Yeah, that gut, that human gut feeling. I think that's talked about a couple of times.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, the sisters were brought specifically to be shoved into the cauldron.
Mhm.
Um, and they were, and then they
Yep.
get tumbled out. Oh, I have a picture for this. I saw it
You do.
already. Yep.
They become Fae. Yep.
Yep, right there.
I know what that one is.
Yep. Oh no,
Yeah.
who is it?
Yeah.
I knew that she was different. From however Elaine had been made, Nesta was different. Even before she took her first breath, I felt it. As if the
Mhm.
cauldron in making her had been forced to give more than it wanted. As if Nesta had fought even after she went under, and had decided that if she was not to be dragged into hell, she was taking. Or, I'm sorry, and decided that she was going to be dragged into hell, she was taking the cauldron with her.
Mhm.
That is honestly probably the best way that this scene could have been drawn. Like,
So good. That is exactly what I had in mind too.
yep,
Yeah.
yep,
Just
so
a
good.
freaking uh she's like a cobra.
Yes. Oh,
Um so good. Tamlin, or not Tamlin, I'm sorry, Lucian realizes that Elaine is his mate.
yep. And just tells her right
Um
then and there.
just tells her right then and there. And this is why I wanted to get here when I was speaking about the reason why Lucian is kind of a third party, lets things happen,
Yeah,
because of Rhysand and how he was kind of shown that he is going to have this mate in the future, and these are the threads to get there. Um, I believe that Lucian had the same thing, where he was being told or showed that this is what needs to happen,
right.
or had visions that of things like to get to this point.
Yeah,
Especially since he like admitted it right away, and was told right away. I think he must have had visions in order to go along. At least in my heart, because I like Lucien's character so much, um, I think
Let me
it
see
makes
if
more
I can.
sense that he was so complacent with Tamlin's behavior, because it would lead to him finding his mate.
Um, hold on. Let's see. I'm gonna find it. There's also a picture of the soup scene.
Aww,
So
that's cute.
it's
That's
so
really
cute.
cute.
I can't wait to start coloring this. I have so
That's
many
very cute.
coloring books, but this one, as soon as we started reading this, I knew I had to get that one.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. Here we go. Um, so we can survive. The dark-haired youngest breathed, her eyes bright. I fell to my knees, the guards not bothering to grab me as I sobbed. What he'd done, what he'd done. The Hellcat now, if you'd be so kind,
Mhm.
the king of hybrid said. I whipped my head to Nesta as she went silent. The cauldron righted itself. Cassian again stirred, slumping on the floor, but his hand twitched toward Nesta. Actually,
Mhm.
it might have been a little bit before.
And it is implied that Nesta is Cassian's mate,
Yes. Well, they
so I'm
have had this
excited.
whole thing
Mhm.
for a while.
Yeah, they were uh at each other's throats a little bit
Yep.
when she was a human. So
Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? And Elaine, as she had been thrown by a wave, washed into the stones face down. Her legs were so pale, so delicate, I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen them bare. The queens pushed forward. Alive, she had to be alive. Had to have what they had to have wanted to live. Elaine sucked in a breath, her fine bone back rising, her wet nightgown nearly sheer. As she rose
Mhm.
from the ground onto her elbows, the gag in place, she twisted a look at me. Nesta began roaring again. Pale skin started to glow. Her face had somehow become more beautiful, infinitely beautiful, and her ears. Elaine's ears were now pointed beneath her sodden hair. Okay, so that's that. Lucian snarled at the king over the bite of the magic at his throat. Don't just leave her on the damned floor. There was a flare of light and a scrape, and then Lucian was stalking toward Elaine, freed of his restraints. Tamlin remained leashed on the ground, a gag of white iridescent magic in his mouth, but his eyes were on Lucian as Lucian took off his jacket, kneeling before Elaine. She cringed away from the coat, from him, hauling Nesta toward the cauldron. Um, as I watched as she was hoisted up. Elaine remained shuddering on the ground, Lucian's coat draped around her. She did not look at the cauldron behind her, not as Nesta's thrashing feet slammed into the water. Okay, so Nesta shouts and all that kind of stuff. Put her
Mhm.
under, teeth bared. One finger, a curse and a damning, a promise. And as Nesta's head was forced under the water, as that hand was violently shoved down, the king of Hybern had the good sense to look somewhat unnerved.
he should he should have.
So he totally shows that he is totally head over heels for her.
Mhm.
When Nesta gets out, she was free, she was loose. She was on her feet, tripping over her slightly longer, linear limbs, ripping the gag from her mouth. Nesta slammed into Lucian, grabbing Elaine from his arms, and screamed at him as he fell back. Get off her.
Mhm.
Elaine's feet slipped against the floor, but Nasta gripped her upright, running her hands over Elaine's face, her shoulders, her hair. Elaine,
Mhm.
Elaine, Elaine, she sobbed.
Mm.
But Elaine was staring over Nesta's shoulder, at Lucian, whose face she had finally taken in. Dark
Mhm.
brown eyes met one eye of russet and one of metal. Nesta was still weeping, still raging, still inspecting Elaine. Lucian's hands slacked at his sides. His voice broke as he whispered to Elaine, "You're my mate."
Mhm.
Like, just right out the gate. Like,
Yep.
I think
No.
so I don't know if it's because they like the fates have them turning into high elves or high fae.
High
At
fae,
that
yeah.
point, that's when their mates know that they're their mates.
Yeah,
Um,
they know for sure.
right,
Yeah.
because like when the girls were first brought out, Lucian didn't have too much inkling towards them. He just knew it was wrong. But
Mhm.
the moment before or the moment after they get turned into high fae is when all of it clicks in. So like when we were
Mhm.
talking about Rhysand and Feyre,
Feyre.
it was the moment of her death, which was just before she got turned into high fae. So I'm
Yes.
guessing it's that moment just before, because they're not the same species, I guess, until that
Maybe.
moment, till that precipice. So
Mhm.
yeah, now we have 3 hybrid, not hybrids, turned
Turn
high
fae.
fae.
Mhm.
And at the end, um, Feyre goes back with Tamlin.
Yes, she does. And but you know that it's all an act. She does
We
it
know
to
it's all an
save.
act. He doesn't seem to have 2 fucking senses to rub together.
Not at all. I mean, obviously, as soon as they step out of the darkness, it's all out the window. Like he lost his sense a long time ago.
Yeah. No, he's trapped
And
in a traumatic cycle.
yes,
Um,
for sure. And she goes back, and I think it's not like explicitly written. I think Rhysand understands that she's gonna escape him again,
yeah, I think
or
in like one of the few chapters that we get from Rhysand's perspective, uh,
Tamlin's perspective is that the king, with all this power, broke their mating bond.
right,
But the actual bond that was broken was
was the
the
bargain.
the bargain,
Yeah,
and it's not very possible to distinguish the difference, because they all felt, everybody in the room felt the power,
right.
when it happened. So Tamlin is under that impression. So he believes wholeheartedly that he can just steal her away and everything will go back to his normal, or the way he wants everyone them to live.
Okay, so more said them. More said them for me as she knelt over Azrael, both of my brothers mercifully unconscious. Tamlin offered passage through his lands and our heads on platters to the king in exchange for trapping Feyre, breaking her bond, and getting to bring her back to Spring Court. Byanthea betrayed Tamlin, told the king where to find Feyre's sisters. So the king had Feyre's sisters brought to the queens to prove he could make them immortal. He put them in the cauldron. We could do nothing as they were turned. He had us by the balls. His
Yeah.
quicksilver eyes shot to me. Rhysand. I managed to say we were out of options, and Feyre knew it, so she pretended to free herself from the control Tamlin thought I'd kept on her mind, pretended that she hated us, and told him she'd go home, but only if the killing stopped, if we were free.
Yep.
And the bond, Amarin breathed, Cassian's blood shining on her hands as she slowed its dribbling. Moore said she asked the king to break the bond, and he obliged. I thought I might be dying, though my chest might actually be cleaved in two. That's impossible, Amren said. What sort of bond cannot be that sort of bond cannot be broken? The king said he could do it. The king is a fool, Amren barked. That sort
Mm-hmm.
of bond cannot be broken. No, it can't, I said. They both looked at me. I cleared my head, my shattering heart, breaking for what my mate had done, sacrificed for me and my family, for her sisters, because she hadn't thought she was essential, even after all she'd done. The king broke the bargain between us, hard to do, but he couldn't tell that it wasn't the mating bond. Moore started. Does Feyre know? Yes, I breathed, and now my mate is in the hands of our enemy. Go get her, Amryn hissed. Right now.
I love Amarin.
I know. She's so good. No, I
Just
said.
she's bloodthirsty
She
in all the good
is,
ways.
in all the
Yes.
best ways.
Yeah.
No, I said, and I hated the word. They gaped at me, and I wanted to roar at the sight of the blood coating them, at my unconscious and suffering brothers on the carpet before them. But I managed to say to my cousin, "Weren't you listening to what Feyre said to him? She promised to destroy him from within." Mor's face paled, her magic flaring on Azriel's chest. "She's going into that house to take him down, to take them all down." I nodded. "She is now a spy, with a direct line to me. What the King of Hybern does, where he goes, and what his plans are, she will know, and report back. For between us, faint and soft, hidden so none might find it, between us lays a whisper of color and joy, of light and shadow, a whisper of her, our bond. She's your mate," Amren bit at me. "Not your spy. Go get her." "She is my mate, and my spy," I said too quietly, "and she is the High Lady of the Night Court." "What?" Mor whispered. I caressed a mental finger down the bond now hidden deep, deep within us, and said, if they had removed her other glove, they would have seen a second tattoo on her right hand. The twin to the other, inked last night when we crept out, found a priestess, and I swore her in as my High Lady.
Aww.
Not a
Yay.
consort? Amarin blurted, blinking. I hadn't seen her surprised in centuries. Not consort, not wife. Feyre is High Lady of the Night Court, my equal in every way. She would wear my crown, sit on a throne beside mine, never sign line, never designated to breeding and parties and child rearing, my queen. As if in answer, a glimmer of love shuddered down the bond, clamped down on the relief that threatened to shatter my calm, or any calm I feigned having. You mean to tell me, Morth breathed, that my High Lady is now surrounded by enemies?
Yes.
A lethal sort of calm crept over her tear-stained face. I mean to tell you, I said, watching the blood clot on Cassian's wings with Amarin tending. Beneath Mor's own hands, Azriel's bleeding at last eased, enough to keep them alive until the healer got here. I mean to tell you, I said again, my power building and rubbing itself against my skin, my bones, desperate to be unleashed upon the world, that your High Lady made a sacrifice for her court, and we will move when the time is right. Perhaps Lucian being Elaine's mate would help, somehow. I'd find a way. And then I'd assist my mate in ripping the Spring Court, Ianthe, and those mortal queens, and the King of Hybern to shreds, slowly. Until then, Amarin demanded, what of the cauldron, of the book? Until then, I said, staring toward the door, as if I might see her walk through it, laughing and vibrant and beautiful, we go to war. Like, that just kind of packaged it up real good. I haven't started the third book, but I am.
You haven't?
I haven't.
Okay.
I've been waiting until we were done with all of our books of the month, so that we could, like, as soon as we started it, I didn't know if you needed to borrow it.
I do. Okay. I have it on Libby, but I think I've got some time. Like, you know how it is, like, they give you an estimated list of, like right now it says 10 weeks, but sometimes people return a bunch of them early, and I can get it next week. I will let you know, though.
Yeah. Well, I can get started on it, because I am interested on what's going on. I'm trying not to look in the coloring book past, like, what we've done.
Okay.
Because I'm not trying to
it's the whole series.
Yeah, it's the whole series.
Oh, okay.
I'm not trying to spoil it for you. I will try and keep my memes to stuff that we already know of. I know we discussed that last night.
That's right.
But I am excited for the next one because this is a different Feyre. I feel like at the end of every book we get a different Feyre. Like, she's
growing.
She's not the same person that she was at the end of the first book. She's not even the same person from the end of the first book to the beginning of the second one. She's not the same person. She's, like, literally
a different person because she's Fae now.
And she's a different person from the beginning of this book to the end of this book. So, and I would say that it's not like a drastic change. They're subtle. Like we were talking about, personalities subtly change to make it feel, like, genuine,
natural, and organic. And I think this is it's very well written.
Yes, this is such a better book than the first one.
Yes. And I'm excited to read the rest of the series. I am.
Yes. All right. Well, that's the end. That's not the last chapter, but that's the
Yay!
end of this one. Final
Yes.
thoughts or
Uh,
predictions. Predictions.
predictions. Huh. I think Feyre is not gonna have. She's gonna have a hard time acting with Tamlin.
You think so?
I think. I think that's not gonna have. I think she's gonna have a very difficult time. Uh, I think a lot of her struggle romantically is to repair that bond that she may think is broken. I don't know. It sounds like Rhysand thinks that she doesn't think it's broken.
Okay.
Um, but we'll see. I hope there's not a whole lot of angst with that, because she's an adult,
Yeah.
and trusts Rhysand implicitly at this point. Um, and with Tamlin, yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit of a struggle because don't aren't the sisters going with her? I think a lot of the
No.
drama.
No, no.
No,
More took the
more
sisters,
took the sisters, both of them.
both of them, and hid them.
I think then my prediction is she's gonna convince Lucian to gang up on Tamlin and either turn on him, make him turn on him, or
Mm.
just she needs help getting out of that situation.
I kind of think
Um,
Lucian is going to actually be the one that instigates it. I think
you think
she's,
so?
yeah, I don't think she's going to have to do much prodding. I think he's going to come to her. Um,
Be like, hey, how are we gonna do this? Because I need
yes,
to get my mate.
right. I think the whole encounter in the throne room of Hybern
Mhm.
really opened. Not that Lucian wasn't aware of what was going on, because it's very obvious that he was, but I
Yes.
think it opened his eyes even more, and he could really see Tamlin for what the fuck up he is.
Yeah.
And I think at some point, he's going to. I think he's going to wait out Feyre to see if how this all goes down. But the
Mhm.
minute she shows more than just a little bit of sass,
Mhm.
and
He's gonna be all on board.
he's going to be like, "Let's get the fuck out of here."
Yeah.
Um, I think he's going to be watching her to see if she's really enraptured in Tamlin again, or if yeah, I think he's been made aware of some things, and now he's looking at everything with new eyes.
I hope so. I really hope so. I hope this doesn't butcher. The next book doesn't butcher Lucian's character.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well,
we'll find out.
we'll find out. That was a 2-hour discussion. Oh my
Yes.
goodness. Okay, so when we come to A Court of Silver Flames, because I can see it from here, it's up on the bookshelf right up there.
Mhm.
It is a thicker book. We're gonna promise to do a 2-parter. We're not gonna have
Okay.
a huge 2-hour sesh again, unless it's absolutely needed. But
Yeah.
thank you everyone for
Yes.
sitting here and listening to us discuss this. I know it
Thank
wasn't
you.
linear, but we enjoyed the hell out of ourselves.
We did, and I think we're getting better at this format thing. I think we made it as linear as we could. There's a
Yeah.
bunch of things that we forgot because it's been 2 weeks since I've read this,
And
and I've read a couple books in between, so it's just
it's
a
been
lot of the
almost a
details.
month for me.
Yeah.
So,
So I think, yeah, just thank you for being here, and
watching as much as you did.
yes,
Uh,
and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
remember to like, subscribe, comment, follow, whatever the hell it is. And let us know actually in the comments if you would prefer to talk to us on Discord, because we're
Mhm.
tossing around the idea of a Discord chat for the
Yes.
channel. As always, we will see you next time. Please be aware of your mental health. Don't
Yes.
endanger yourself in books or in television or anything. There is help out there. All you need to do is reach out for it. Thank you guys.
Thank you.